Oh, hello. Do you think that Big Brother is watching? Or that the Illuminati is planning to take over the world? Have you happened to have an encounter with a space alien today? Well, if the answer to those questions is yes, then grab your hat. This is tinfoil hat time. Welcome back to tinfoil hat time. Today we're going to talk about Facebook wants to know everything. Oh yeah, they do. So the spark for this video actually started when I noticed a few of the notifications that they were starting to add conversation starters to the Messenger app. Now, I don't use the Messenger app. I really don't use Facebook much either. But inside of the Messenger app, to my understanding, when you see your contact list there, it will, if you click on a person, it will give you some suggestions, things that you might want to talk about that are based upon maybe your likes, maybe their likes. Well, I guess mostly based on their likes and maybe where you guys might have likes that kind of overlap. Based upon, hey, you've both seen this website. You've both looked at this website. What do you think of it? You know, or your friend has just come back from a trip to Hawaii. Ask him how his trip went, or things like that. And I think, here's the tinfoil hat in me, it's coming early. The tinfoil hat in me says that they're doing this to prompt more conversations on their network because everything that is done on their network is something that they have access to. It's a means that they can collect more data and more individual about you, about other people for their own ends. Mostly probably marketing, but maybe more. Who knows? So as I started to delve into this concept of Facebook and data collection, the first major article going on right at this time is this WhatsApp data merger. So in 2014, Facebook purchased WhatsApp for, I think it was $19 billion. Because WhatsApp is another instant messenger type platform, kind of like their messenger system, and it had proven itself to be good in the field. And so they decided, hey, let's buy this thing. So they bought it, and it raised some little eyebrows. WhatsApp is really, really big, and Facebook is really, really big. What happens when the two merge together? Really, 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 really big with a whole lot of conglomerating data about individual users. Well, they said when they had made the purchase in 2014 that, no, they're going to operate as different services. And that was like, okay. Well, just quite silently, they decided to make the shift and merge the data anyway. Now, Germany stood up and said, I don't think you can do that, and they challenged that merger. So if you're in Germany, you're good. Anywhere else, WhatsApp and Facebook, they're merging together. For a giant amount of conglomeration. So then that led me to this question. I know they own Oculus Rift. They do, if you weren't aware of that. And I know that they happen to, obviously they have the WhatsApp. I was curious how many others, so I just did a basic search, and I was able to find a Wikipedia list with 60 different items. Now, a few of those are Facebook. Like the first item is Facebook's domain name. Obviously, we're not going to say that that was anything. So they did a name change from thefacebook.com is what the comment is there. But some of these are like, a $31 million purchase of the ConnectU social networking platform in 2008. FriendFeed was a $47.5 million purchase. Friendster, I remember something about Friendster. I don't remember what it was, but $40 million for that purchase. There's a few things like Next Step, travel recommendation site. They bought that for $2.5 million, so fairly small. There's a couple of negative $10 million. They must have sold those off, I guess. But basically, they're collecting companies that deal with two different areas: data collection and data analysis. So while most of those are like social media type data collection, there's a mobile advertising, group messaging, information. But a few of these were interesting, like software design. And if you watched one of my recent videos, I talk about being very careful about the apps that you download. Facebook actually owns a mobile app developing system. If I can find it, I'll identify it. But this one was particularly interesting. Face.com is a facial recognition platform. They bought that from a company for $100 million. So these are not small companies. The Atlas Advertiser Suite, they bought that for a little less than $100 million here. Here's mobile app backends is Parse Company, $85 million. So they're collecting companies that deal with data collection and companies that deal with data analysis. So that the idea here is that they can collect and analyze all of this data. So that leads me back to my original reason for wanting to do the article, is Facebook. What is it doing? Facebook is doing a lot of weird stuff. But one of the things that they're doing is collecting all of the data, not just through users, because they've realized they kind of hit this tipping point. They're kind of post-knee, they're past saturation mark. The number of Facebook users isn't going up anymore. It's kind of static. You know, they're picking some up as kids grow of age. They're losing some off as people either die or say, okay, Facebook, it's clickbait and food. Yeah, and cute cats. Yes, cute cats. Let's not forget cute cats. Cute kitty kitty. Anyway, so as you get the interplay going back and forth between Facebook and the web, it raises some interesting questions. The big question for the hat is this: if I go to Facebook.com and I sign up to the form, and I pretend that I've read the privacy policy by clicking I agree, even though I didn't even skim it. Just, do you agree? Yes, sure, why not? Okay, you do that, you're asking for the trouble. You're asking for Facebook to have a profile on you. You're asking for all that stuff because you were agreeing to their terms and conditions in exchange for the system that they have. And so you're putting it together. No big deal. Now, if I happen to use Facebook.com and I log it in, there's a little piece of my hat there sticking down there, tinfoil my hat up. I don't want any Faradays leaking there. All right. So if I use Facebook and then I stay logged into it and then I browse the net, I can see an argument for that because, you know, I go to the website, I've logged into Facebook, I have the account, they're storing a cookie, that's how I don't have to keep on logging in every single time. I finally get there, but they're tracking every website I go to along the way. And that's questionable if that's good, but all that's going into my profile as well, because it's a text that Facebook tracking cookie, it puts it on there. Okay, fine. You still ask for it because you sign up on Facebook. But what about those people that don't? And here's why that's significant. It is very significant because if I have not agreed to Facebook's privacy policy, I haven't even pretended to agree to Facebook privacy policy. I don't have a site, I don't have an account. What we know now is that Facebook, by using like buttons, share buttons, and tracking pixels, they can put together a piece of information on anybody. And they do. And if you do the little fun social experiment of utilizing one computer that has not used Facebook before, you use the same browser on the same computer and likely on the same network, you interact with the web for a while, maybe you send people some emails, other people have taken pictures of you and you happen to be in their system and they scarily actually know you in many cases. And then 2 months later, with that same computer, before you close any cookies, you create your Facebook page. You are going to be offered all sorts of likes to things that you've looked at in the past, that your friends like. You'll have contact lists, like your entire contact list system will show up as potential friends for you. And you're going to have a really crazy profile just by doing that. It's going to be what happens most of the time. So I think that for us, what we need to think about is Not just are we agreeing to Facebook or not agreeing to Facebook, because I have a few computers in my office here that I've never used Facebook on them. I won't use Facebook on them. As far as Facebook is concerned, those computer devices don't have Facebook, but they're still tracking a whole lot of data on those computers. I've never agreed to that. So what can we do? Well, let me cover a few steps that we can do, and then we'll cover a few things that, a few things we can do as individuals, and then maybe a few things we could potentially think about doing as a country through the legislative process. So personally, one of the things is don't get a Facebook account if you don't need a Facebook account. I have one that I post something on every now and again, but really, I got the Facebook account back when Facebook was still the cool thing, before ads showed up. And I used it somewhat, but not a whole lot. Nowadays, I think Facebook has just become this ludicrous mess of crap. In fact, if you've noticed, I don't have, like buttons. People are like, you should have a like button to Facebook and a comment. No. I don't like what Facebook does. And I know that by putting a Facebook tracking pixel or Facebook like button or Facebook share button on my website, that's going to go against a little bit of a couple of things that I stand up for, in the means that I don't want Facebook in particular collecting data about every user that comes to my site. I'd just rather not be the case. The next thing you can do is you can clear your cookies on a regular basis. Here's why. If you go onto the web and you're on your regular computer, all these different websites utilize cookies. Now, you could turn off cookies entirely, which would be the safest option, but you'll find that many websites don't work without cookies enabled. You'll go to it, enable cookies all over, enable cookies, like a cookie jar. No. They're off for a reason. It's like that stupid bug on the iPhone, right? Where I intentionally have gone through the painstaking trouble of going through 5 screens to find the spot where I can turn off an app for cellular data, because I do not want that app utilizing any cellular data. And every time I turn on the stupid app, data's turned off. You get a little pop-up. It's like, dude, I know that. Where's the cancel forever button? I'm well aware of this. It's the same thing, I just don't want that. So, but if you go on with, if you have those cookies turned off, that's the safest. But if you do need to turn them on to interact with some websites, you could do that. But between your sessions, you want to close your cookies. And most browsers, I know Firefox, you can set it up that clears all of your cookies and all of your browsing history when you close the browser. What that's going to do is it's going to prevent a website you looked at yesterday from communicating information to a company today about websites you've looked at yesterday. So if I go to coolcars.com or whatever one day because I'm looking at cars, and the next day I look up something about gardening, the site I'm looking at about gardening might want to say, well, what type of information you've looked at about cars? Well, I could do that, and it'll feed the information in. In fact, there was actually an automotive company somewhere that they had an app put together that if you could put in your name and information in the form there about the, just filling the basic information out to schedule a test drive, well, what their cookies would do and their site would do is it analyze all those other cookies based upon seeing this site, seeing all the other sites, and it would actually suggest when you get there, unbeknownst to you, the car dealer already knew the top car you had in mind. The top car that you had in mind there, because they're utilizing all that data. Now, if I turn on a clean, no cookie browser, no cookie, no history browser, and I start navigating to different sites, the different sites will be able to see and interact with the other sites, and we produce this giant web of information that it stores. But if I go on and I clear those every time, each time I open up the web, it kind of starts with a blank slate. And they can still grab some of the information based on the MAC addresses, the IP addresses, computer IDs, things like that. Those are the things that like Microsoft's talk about, the computer ID in the system. And so as you get this interfacing going on, it starts to build a profile about you. Best way? kill the cookies. On my browsers, I don't always clear them out because I use a variety of different computers and a variety of different browsers, and I do clean them out on a regular basis. But what the best recommendation is that I can have is you use different browsers. You use things like Policeman is a great browser plugin, at least just for Firefox. I'm not sure if it's on Chrome or not. I don't use Chrome. For Firefox, you put the Policeman on there, and that'll actually block everything loading onto a website from a different URL, like a different address. So in other words, if I go to coolnewssite.com or whatever, and there's a Facebook like button, it will not load the Facebook like button because facebook.com, which is where that like button feeds from, is not coolnewssite.com, the site we are on. So what Policeman does is it blocks access to anything that is not directly stored on that system. Now you'll encounter some problems. Many websites build their jQuery libraries by calling the jQuery directly from Google. You will block those, in which case the site may not work. So be prepared for that. But it does give you a little icon up there in the corner, and it will show you kind of with a green versus red bar what percentage of this site is loaded. Here's the scary thing. I look at different banking sites I'm using because I don't use Policeman on my regular browser, but I do use it on my banking computer. PNC Bank, a tiny sliver loads from pnc.com. The rest of it on a banking internal logged in portal is a whole bunch of third-party sites. Makes me want to kind of close my accounts at PNC. Other banks I was working with didn't do that quite as much. Not that I've worked with a ton of them, but just an observation looking at some of the banks that I've worked with. PNC is loading a lot of third-party stuff. In fact, PNC will not work with Policeman installed unless you do some customizations to that thing. But that's a good browser plugin. There's another one called Disconnect, which I have not seen how that's working. I mean, I've installed it just a couple days ago to play with it. I haven't had a chance to play with it much. But in theory, Disconnect allows you to do the same thing. So in brief summary, off the top of my head, this is totally unscripted. I'm going to miss stuff, I'm sure. But using different browsers, clearing out cookies on a regular basis, maybe even consider going no cookies allowed. Then that's your biggest concern is your cookies. You could also use the Tor network, which will adjust and change your IP address. And if you do certain installs, you'll have the option to scramble your MAC address as well. You'll get a little bit of DNS leakage here and there, but whatever. The DNS leakage more goes to your ISP than it does going to the company you're looking at, so that's fine. I don't care, you know. So those are some of the tips that you can do as an individual. Just watch out for the cookies mostly. Your IP address can be changed. Clear things out. The other thing you could actually do is you could block the specific URLs with something like just going into the host file. So that's what I always do. If like I have my new Mint computer, which is kind of my new test office computer, I've actually blocked Facebook, I've blocked Twitter, I've blocked pretty much all the social media. I've blocked all the guys that are known to be huge data mining collection places, like ask.com is a big one, dictionary.com is a big one. Those things collect so much data, it's not even funny. And so I blocked those inside of my system. Now I did find an app, and I'm not sure if this is in all Linux distros. I'm going to have to start looking for it, but I just installed Peppermint for a friend this weekend, and Peppermint actually has a place in there where you can go in there, click the button, and it will literally add, I think it adds something like 1,000 or so lines to its host file to block every known ad network. Cool. Okay, now again, I'm not like anti-ad. I'm just anti when they're collecting all of the data to give to you. I want to see ads for things that are relevant to what I'm looking at. You know, if I'm looking at a gardening site, show me some garden stuff. I'm going to learn something by your advertising. But if I always look at cars and I'm looking at a garden site and you're still feeding me information about cars, I haven't learned anything except what's on here. But if I learn something from the ad, I might be more inclined to buy from it. And that's probably why is it Bank of America, I think, cards are having these celebrity chefs on there. Here's a cooking tip, now buy a card. Now that's out of place. That's just stupid. That just makes me walk away from the screen when I see that kind of junk. But a relevant ad, okay? I'm looking up gardening stuff. Like I just built a very small mini scale aquaponics system just as an experiment to see what happens. If I get ads on that for things like the filtration or the water pumps or stuff like that, hey, I've just learned of a place I can buy it. It gives me a place to start. But if it's feeding me all the same stuff I've looked at over and over and over and over and over and over and over, I'm going to get sick of looking at this stuff. I'm going to totally tune out. So, that's just something to keep in mind. Companies involved in this. So blocking host files, cookies, IPs, all that kind of stuff. Now, as a society, what could we do? Well, in the American culture, one of the things that we could do is a similar thing that they do in the European countries, and that is that there are laws about what a company can do, and they vary by different country in the European nations. But in most cases, you have the option to ask a company and say, what information do you have about me? And you can request some information, if not all information, be removed about you. But at least we know who has what. And that's the good thing. All right. Now, the other thing that we could do as a society is we could have harsher penalties if a company collects our data without our consent. And this goes back to how Facebook is collecting more data about people through cookies. It's one thing if I go to facebook.com, create an account, and I have allowed them to do that because it's probably somewhere in that privacy policy that most of us have never read. But it's a completely different story if I've never used Facebook, I've never logged onto Facebook, I do not agree to Facebook, and they still are tracking me with all of their cookies. I think that we should have harsher laws against that type of thing. All right. So Facebook, they want to know everything. They want to know who we're talking to. They want to know what we're talking about. They want to know it all. And they're seeking to know it all through either acquisitions or through whatever other means that they want. But they're seeking to know it all. Best we can do, unless laws get changed in this country, we have to do the best that we can do. You can block it. You can prevent it. You're going to get most of it. Multiple computers, I didn't mention that, multiple computers, multiple browsers, that'll confuse the systems. If you get really sophisticated or can find one or whatever, you could actually have an anonymizing bot. The best way to stay privatized in this culture is to give them so much information they can't figure out what's a bot and what's actually you. So one guy I've heard of, he actually has a bot running in the background perpetually doing random Google searches. So when he gets on and does a Google search, you don't know it's him. It's bots. So you can do that kind of stuff. That's kind of beyond the scope of most people's skill level. But the tinfoil hat kind of speaks. I think Facebook wants to know too much data. It's kind of scary. With that, this has been Tom with a tinfoil hat time. I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.